Hey guys, it's Colin, and I am at the back offices of All-American Harley-Davidson, and I'm going to introduce you to this gentleman in just a second here. But I'm going to tell you a little backstory of why I'm here. So February 22nd, it's a great day. It's my birthday. It's George Washington's birthday, but if you remember, it was also when Harley-Davidson did the virtual release of the Pan-America, and that's why I'm here today. So got a little backstory to this. When that came out, I remember calling Lyndon a couple days later and I said, hey, listen, can you tell me a little information about this? So I came down here. We're in this office that this is being filmed right now. And he started going over all the specs, started talking about all this stuff, and my eyes were glazing over because, sorry, man. He was talking about like tech speak, and I'm not a motorhead or a gearhead, whatever you want to call it. He is, but you know, as I'm more interested in the tech. But I started thinking about it, and I said, you know what? This would be awesome. All this information that he's sharing with us to share with everybody on YouTube. So that's what I'm here today. So let me introduce to you Lyndon, and he's the general manager of Harley Davidson. So I'm gonna let him say a couple words, and then what we'll do is then I'm just gonna ask him a bunch of questions about the Pan-America and the different aspects of it, and he's gonna fill us all kinds of knowledge. So Lyndon, introduce yourself.
Lyndon Abel, Director of Operations, which is kind of the same as the General Manager of All-American Harley-Davidson here in beautiful Southern Maryland. And we have been anticipating the launch of Pan-America. Harley has a lot of classes available for dealership employees, so I've taken all of those and tried to soak up all the knowledge that I can, and Colin is right, I am a little bit of a motor nerd, so I like the technical ins and outs of horsepower and motorcycles in general, so happy to talk about that stuff anytime. It's my favorite thing to do.
All right, let's get started, everybody. Lyndon, what is your overall take on the Pan-America?
Well, it's an interesting question because this is really a motorcycle that Harley's never done before. And in my thinking, it's not so much a Harley-Davidson with a different purpose. It's really just a completely different motorcycle with the handcuffs off. Harley has tremendous heritage, but that comes with some handcuffs, right? If they do a design, their traditional design appeals to an awful lot of people, us included. But if they, stray too far from that design, they get some people upset with them. So when they attacked this motorcycle, they were really able to do something totally different. The motor, the chassis, the look, everything. They did not have to worry about it looking like a Harley, if you will. And the reality is Harley has had a tremendous amount of technology in their motorcycles for a long time. You know that, but I think an awful lot of people look at a Harley Davidson and say, well, that 2021 looks an awful lot like that mid-80s Batwing fairinged motorcycle, so Harley is clearly steeped in the past. And while that's not true, I think that this motorcycle could change some people's minds about the amount of technology that Harley is capable of producing and the, some of their innovative design. So, just overall, I think it's a really cool motorcycle. And then specifically, it appeals to a market segment that Harley just hasn't served, ever. And I know in their announcement, they talked about the heritage of going off-road and stuff like that. But let's face it, that was, people took normal bikes on dirt paths. That does not equate at all to modern day adventure riding, right? Which is what this bike is. And so having a bike that is purpose-built for doing something very different allows them to compete in a segment and maybe attract some people to the brand that they've never had before. Not to say that traditional Harley customers like us won't be interested in this bike, but there are other people, right, who ride adventure touring motorcycles who would have no interest in a motorcycle from Harley Davidson, not because they dislike Harley, but because Harley doesn't make anything that suits their needs. Now they do. So on both of those fronts, I really think it's a cool bike, and I'm really excited to see them when they finally arrive.
That's cool. When you mentioned earlier about the new engine, so the Revolution Max motor.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Well, that's, handcuffs are off, right? So totally different technology. In when they redesigned their big twin motor back in 2017 and created the Milwaukee 8 motor, I think it's a beautiful motor. And they did an awful lot of things technologically to produce more power and have it run cooler, as well as befriend the EPA, government agencies, and so forth. They really did a nice job, but they did have to stay within the bounds of what a traditional Harley-Davidson motor should be. They didn't have to do that with this. So it's a 60 degree, not 45 degree, liquid cooled, not air cooled, V-twin. That uses variable valve timing, something that's common in modern motors, but really a remarkable way to achieve low-end torque while producing a lot of high-end horsepower. This is a motor that puts out 150 horsepower and just south of 100 foot-pounds of torque. It's got a red line of 9,500 RPMs, but it's not peaky. It promises to be, thanks to the variable valve timing, it promises to have that Harley-esque low-end grunt that you would want doing some off-road stuff, and yet have the high RPM power that can be an awful lot of fun when you're up in there. It's some other interesting things about it, and in fact, we're going to host a seminar, and so I took the opportunity when you called me and asked me to do this, to write a bunch of stuff down. So I'm going to check some of my notes if that's okay.
I think that's totally okay, because this has only been out a couple of weeks. So
yeah,
that's a lot of information.
Trying to learn, and I haven't seen one yet.
It's like a lot already. Just looking online. I know you guys are going through training and stuff. But
yeah.
So yeah, by all means.
Yeah, and the classes have been great, and so we have been trying to soak up as much information as we can. We want to be informed. When customers ask us questions, we want to be able to answer them. But in some cases, we might need our cheat sheets. Anyway, 4 valve heads, not surprising. Overhead cams, not surprising. A low maintenance design, which I like, instead of a shim and bucket. They're hydraulically adjusting valves, so I do like that. All aluminum cases, and cylinders and so forth for lighter weight, as you would expect. The cylinders are a plated bore, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds for you. But there's counterbalancers in both the bottom end and in the heads. And the way they did the counterbalancers at the cam, is a very unique sort of spiral design, which reduces weight while smoothing things out the way it's supposed to. It looks very innovative. They also have a triple stage oil pump just on the scavenge side, which I think is interesting. So instead of creating one low spot in the motor and scavenging the oil from there, on an adventure touring bike, you might be going, up a mountain or down a mountain, and the low spot changes, right? And it'll change for a long enough period of time that it could slow the motor down and create a power loss. And so by having scavenging from 3 different areas, they're able to eliminate that possibility, which I thought was pretty clever.
You mentioned, I remember when we were first talking about this a couple weeks back, about how excited you are with the suspension.
Yeah, so the suspension, obviously, and when you and I talked about shocks for your bike, we talked a little bit about this, that in a perfect world, to have perfect suspension, you need unlimited amount of suspension travel. So the more you have to compromise suspension travel, the more complicated the job of soaking up the bump becomes, obviously. So what you want in an adventure touring bike is as much suspension travel as possible. That's not that difficult to do, but pretty soon the seat height gets pretty tall, and you need, a tree stump to stand on to get on your motorcycle and to get off your motorcycle, and God forbid you get to a red light, right? So the 1250S Pan-America model comes with suspension with adaptive ride height and self-adjusting preload. So what this means is that when you get on the bike, it's 2 inches lower. When you start riding the bike, it comes up about 2 inches, depending on your weight and so forth. When you come to a stop, it drops back down 2 inches. Another component of it is it automatically adjusts preload. And there's probably a lot of confusion about what preload is, but you want to have the preload is just taking a spring and squeezing it tighter so that the spring is stiffer. It's that simple, right? So if you're a 100-pound person, you need less preload on a suspension than you do if you're a 300-pound person. If you are going over big, huge bumps, you want less preload than you do if you're trying to get a controlled ride on a pretty flat highway. So this suspension system actually adjusts to those things automatically. It senses what kind of bumps you're using, how heavy the rider is or rider-passenger combination, and automatically adjusts, which I think is pretty clever. And you can think, not a big deal, I can adjust my preload myself, but it is kind of a pain. And what most people end up doing is they pick a compromise setting, and if they put their passenger on the back and load up their saddlebags, or they're riding solo, or they're going on a bumpy road versus mountain twisties where they want control, they don't ever change it. And so this allows you to really have the best of both worlds. You don't have to worry about it, and you get an optimum setting.
You mentioned about, I believe it's an option, is the spoked wheel?
Yeah, so standard on both models is a lightweight mag wheel. Looks to be a perfectly good designed wheel, looks nice. But I kind of dig this tubeless spoke design. So a spoke wheel has the capacity to be stronger in extreme situations. In other words, the hub is sort of suspended within the rim by the spokes, and that means that it's a little less likely to break. To be fair, they're a little more likely to bend, but in an extreme situation, it could bend a little bit and not break. The biggest problem with a spoke, beyond people that don't want to have to clean them, I understand that, but you can't make them tubeless very easily. You've got 40 holes in the rim where all those spokes are going through. So this isn't the first wheel to do this, but it is a very nice design. The spokes attach externally, so one end to the hub and the other end to the rim, but outside of the bead area. And the benefit of this is that you can run a tubeless tire. And while you really shouldn't be confident about plugging a motorcycle tire, if you're out in the middle of some national park someplace, being able to plug a tire and ride out of the park carefully, safely, versus pushing it out of the park with a flat tire is kind of night and day, right? So yeah. It's a nice advantage to have. I do think that they look cool, but that's subjective.
Now the fuel tank on this is what, 5.6 gallons?
Yep, correct, 5.6 gallons, and the fuel tank is actually all aluminum. Also to reduce weight, and we talked about the motor being fairly lightweight, mostly aluminum. There's actually some magnesium pieces in there too, to cut down on the weight. And the chassis is also lightweight too, right? The motor is a stressed member of the chassis with 3 subcomponents. It's not a revolutionary design in motorcycling, but it certainly is to Harley Davidson. This is all new. And all of that helps produce a weight that dry is probably about 500 pounds. It's the 1250 model has a wet weight of 534, I think, and the S model is 559.
So that includes the gas and
that's what they claim as wet weight, which should include gas, oil, fork oil, and the whole smash. So ready to go, but not you on it.
I also like how they have with the stainless steel, the pipes.
Yeah, the exhaust is stainless steel. It's funny. I sometimes see an older motorcycle that not so much a Harley because they do a pretty good job with the exhaust, but an older, different motorcycle, and the whole thing looks okay, and then the header pipe is just all rusty and crusty, and it kind of makes the whole bike look like hell. Anyway, it is a stainless steel exhaust system. I'm curious about the weight of the muffler. OE mufflers have a tendency of being super heavy, and they have a titanium replacement muffler for it. I'm not sure what the weight difference is, but I'm looking forward to finding out. I know on the previous model that Harley had, they had a very heavy OE muffler and a titanium Screaming Eagle replacement, and the difference was about 25 pounds.
The windshield's adjustable?
Yes, the windshield is adjustable, and I don't know exactly how that works.
Because I haven't seen a lot of information on that. That's why I'm asking that.
Yeah, I haven't either. So I don't know whether it is mechanically adjustable or electrically adjustable. Obviously, there's some advantages to having an adjustable windshield.
Sure.
You know, if you're 6 inches taller than somebody else, you're going to probably want a different windshield height. But also, you know, if you're riding in the summer in the heat in the desert versus up in the mountains where it gets cold, you might want a little bit of protection. Or if you're spending a lot of time standing up on the pegs, you might want
Sure.
a different position.
So there's a lot of tech on this bike.
A lot of tech, right. So, you know, the variable valve timing is a big part of that tech, but it's got ride modes, and ride modes aren't brand new, and I'll tell you a little bit about them in general, but one of the things that really sort of knocked me back that I thought was super cool is that they have one of the things that are, so first of all, the S model has 5 ride modes and then 3 ride modes that are completely customizable, 5 from the factory, 3 customizable. So among those, you can adjust all of the things that are part of the ride modes from the factory in the adjustable ones. One of the things that you can adjust is how much engine braking you have. Now that's crazy, right? Because, you know, when you ride a motorcycle, you roll off the throttle and the engine braking is just purely controlled about what RPM you're in, right?
Yeah.
But because it has variable valve timing, right, it can control the amount of engine braking. So it's basically controlling the static compression within the cylinder based on what RPM you're at to make more static compression, which will slow you down faster, or less, which will slow you down less fast. So, and it just calculates that based on whether you want a lot or a little bit of engine braking. I think that's super cool. There are also suspension adjustments within the ride modes. So, you know, whether you want a sporty, more controlled ride or an off-road, more compliant ride, and a lot of things in between. It has most of the features of Harley-Davidson's RDRS, including hill hold, built into these systems. So it's got
Nice.
cornering enhanced anti-lock braking, right? So unlike your car where it just waits for the wheel to slip and then goes, oh, the wheel slipped, and let me just release the brake and then re-squeeze. You know, if that happens on a motorcycle, once you break traction, you're already going. So it uses an internal motion sensor that can tell whether you're straight up, leaned over, or way leaned over, right? Tells where you are in the lean, how fast you're going, and then if you do something that would upset the chassis, like snatch the brakes or whack the throttle, it will step in and say, let's not do that. And you don't feel it the way you would feel it in your car, right? If you're whacking the throttle, it views that as a torque request and it decides whether it should give that to you or not. Now, for those of you out there that may want to say, what? If I want to slide, I want to slide. You can turn it off, right? You can reduce it, you can crank it up, you can turn it off.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really nice safety option. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of safety on that thing, but it's not a nanny state, right? It allows you to make that choice yourself.
And the TFT screen, was it almost
6.8 inch, right? And it seemed, I saw one screenshot where it had like the bike information and it looked like you were looking at the control board of the Enterprise. I mean, everything was up there. But it'll also Bluetooth to your phone, connect to your phone, connect to a wireless headset. So if you want to take phone calls, if you want to listen to music, if you want to get Waze to tell you where you're going. Evidently the way the map works on it is also pretty cool, that the map moves in a certain way, but I obviously still waiting on seeing one, so we'll see.
And the Special has a lot of things obviously standard on it, but like some of the accessories.
It's more special.
It's more special. It's a
Right.
special bike.
Yeah, I think it comes with the brush guard. It comes with a center stand. It does come with a skid plate. Comes with some extra lighting. It's got the two-tone paint available. It's got the adaptive ride height available. It's got the spoke wheels available.
I know some of the accessories, like if I were to get one, I'd look at the
aluminum saddlebags.
Yeah, I like the aluminum.
Yeah, those are cool.
Not a fan of the soft, but I like the aluminum one.
Yeah, you know, a friend of mine rides ADV bikes a lot, and he was telling me about the attributes of the benefits of the soft. So I think it really depends on your application. But I think, it just depends on what you're using them for. But I'm with you. I thought those aluminum saddlebags seem watertight, tough, practical.
Now, originally, when they did this virtual event on the 22nd, they came out and said that the bikes are going to come out the 1st of May. Are they doing any type of demo events or anything like that?
So first of all, just to clear something up, they said they were going to start shipping them in May.
So probably
just for the
more
record,
June.
The 31st of May is still May. I'll buy you a crab cake for lunch if they're here on the 1st of May.
I won't touch seafood, but I'll take up another dinner. So.
So I don't know. I mean, I've just been telling people we expect to see them summertime.
Okay.
And I'm thinking slightly before or somewhat after Memorial Day. So one of the things that Harley wants to make sure, and I think some people are worried about, I personally don't think it's a concern, but I guess it depends on the kind of dealership that you have. But there is a concern that Harley customers and Harley employees are purely, zeroed in on traditional Harley motorcycles, and they're not really going to know what to do with this motorcycle or the customer for this motorcycle or care about this motorcycle. I don't see it. What I see in my dealership here at All-American is people that love motorcycles. And, we don't look down at people because they're riding a sport bike or an adventure bike or anything. We love the fact that they're riding motorcycles. We may prefer ours over theirs, but it doesn't mean that we look down on anybody who's riding two wheels. So I don't really see that. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement in every dealership, and there certainly is in this store. I think we were the first one in the district to complete all of our training, and there was a fair amount of it.
Yeah.
But I think everybody is pretty engaged in it. However, Harley is doing something cool. I hope that's not what's slowing the motorcycles down until summer, but they're going to give dealership employees the opportunity to ride these bikes, so they're going to 44 different locations. Cool. And Keith and I are signed up at one location. A couple other folks are signed up at another location. We're going to go ride the Pan-America and also be able to ride a BMW GS, which I've ridden before, a KTM, which I've ridden before, and a Ducati ADV bike. I haven't ridden a Ducati, that particular Ducati before. But it'd be nice to A/B compare those bikes and talk to some experts at Harley to get some of the specifics on, the touch screen and how to adjust the ride modes and how the suspension works and things like that.
Cool. So
maybe I could get you to run some video for me.
Why don't you just hire me for a week? take me along with you.
How about a day?
How about a day? There you go. I'll wrap it up with this question. Do you ever think that the Revolution Max motor will make its way into like a bagger? Just more of an opinion.
Well, that's a great question. I think that it would be crazy to put this kind of development into a brand new motor with this much new technology and not put it into something else. Bagger wouldn't be my first guess. More of a Sportster-oriented type bike. Something, so a lot of your folks may have known about the Bronx, which was a planned bike in the Street Fighter category. I think that'd be a tougher category for Harley to break into, quite frankly, but I know that there were a lot of people who were interested in that motorcycle. They also had another one with no determined timeline, which was I think they were calling it a 1250 Custom, but more of a hot rod than a straight up Street Fighter. And I would not at all be surprised to see that be the next sort of different motorcycle that this motor went into. A bagger, it's certainly possible. I would think that it would be kind of a very different designed bagger. I wouldn't expect that they would take a Street Glide and remove a Milwaukee 8 and put this in. I think that they would feel a need to redesign it substantially enough to make it different and more specifically modern. That said, they don't consult with me, so that's just my speculation.
I really want to thank Lyndon for taking the time out of his day to sit down with me and go over a bunch of different stuff about the Pan-America and the new engine, all the different ins and outs of this bike. I've told him before, I'm really interested in the ADV market. I'm really interested, really thinking hard about purchasing this bike. So hopefully he's gonna, hook me up down the road when it finally does come in. But now get out there and ride, everybody. Be well, and I'll talk to you guys soon.